We are going to continue studying prophecy. So does everyone have their Bibles?
Yep.
At least in an electronic version. We've got some extras there. Yeah, it's kind of a small font, but it'll work. So we have gone through, in our evening lessons, we did kind of an overview of prophecy. It was kind of quick. We hit the most important stuff, the Antichrist and all that. And then in the mornings, we're trying to do a little bit more detail. I like to make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and so I'm trying to go through it very carefully and show you guys all the details. Because I know me, if someone just shows me just, little pieces, I'm wondering, well, why'd you skip that? Why'd you skip that? And I did it for the sake of time in the evening, but I want to go back through so you guys are confident and see, hey, we're looking at all the details, and it's still the same message is coming across. So we've gone through and we're looking at the book of Daniel. Next week we'll be in Daniel one more week, and then the following week we're going to skip over to Revelation. But I wanted to lay the groundwork in Daniel, and then we'll continue in Revelation, because they are really sister books. You'll find that the more you study them. Daniel and Revelation are like this. Most, probably a lot of commentaries have recognized that throughout Christian history, that these books are like that. So we've looked at Daniel 2. We looked at Daniel 7. We spent 2 weeks on Daniel 7. And now we're in Daniel 8. And why did we skip? Do you guys remember, this goes back a few weeks here. Why did we skip chapter 1, chapters 3 through 6? Do you guys remember why? Does anyone have an idea why we might have skipped those? Maybe?
Story of Daniel?
Those are the stories. Yeah, those are the stories. And so we're looking at the prophecy chapters. And I'm skipping the stories because you really don't need me or anyone else to explain those. They're not very hard to understand. So that's the reason why. So again, I don't think I'm just, you're skipping all these chapters. Well, it's because we really don't need a class.
Is it that 2, 7, and 8 are all related because they are all prophetic?
2, 7, and 8 are definitely.
2, 7, and 8 are all parallel.
Yes. And what's interesting, I was just studying in Daniel just a couple nights ago, is that Daniel is not necessarily written in chronological order. Did you know that? It jumps around. The chapters jump around a little bit. And you can see that because it says the first year of this king, and then the next chapter will be it'll say the third year, then the next chapter will say, oh, now it's the first year. It's like, well, you've gone back. But he did that on purpose. And the same thing happens in Revelation. It's not necessarily in chronological order. Anyway, so that was kind of our introduction. We're going to get into Daniel 8, and I hope you guys have your Bibles now, because we are definitely going to need them. There we go. Okay. So we're going to look at the kingdoms of Daniel chapter 8. And it's going to be a little bit of review from last week, and we're going to build on it. So, I want to start off with a question. Which part of this prophecy did Daniel not understand? That's a question we want to answer today. Which part of this prophecy did Daniel not understand? The thing is, in this chapter here, part of the prophecy is interpreted. Part of this chapter is interpreted, and part of it Daniel does not yet understand. And it's key for us to understand which part is explained, which part is clear, and you guys will see it's very obvious, and then which part is not. Daniel just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. Notice this in Daniel chapter 8, verse 27. This is the last verse of the chapter. It says, "And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days." So the dream affected him so much that he was sick. He was out of work for a few days. It says, "Afterward I rose up and did the king's business." Then he went back to work. Because Daniel, you guys realize Daniel was like prime minister. And this is during the time of Belshazzar, but he was pretty high up in Belshazzar, and in the next kingdom, in the Persian kingdom, he was like the prime minister of Persia. So he took a few days off. The vision affected him so much he had to take some time off. He was sick. And he says, "I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it." Now this is different. Daniel doesn't say this in the other chapters. When we've read so far in Daniel chapter 2, do you remember that when Daniel gives the interpretation to the king, the dream to the king? He's very certain about it. There's no, I don't get it. He says, this is the dream, this is the interpretation, it's sure. And there's no doubt about it. In Daniel chapter 7, he gives the vision, it's interpreted, it's amazing, he's astonished at it, but it's understood. At the end of Daniel chapter 8, he says, I don't get it. This is different, right? And then understood. But it's only part of this vision that he does not understand. Part of it's review, and that's what we're going to see. So why is it important to know which part Daniel did not understand? Why is that important? The reason why is because the next chapter gives more information on the subject. And so we want to know, when the next chapter goes to explain the part that Daniel didn't understand, which part of Daniel 8 is Daniel 9 connected to? The part he doesn't understand. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're identifying which part he doesn't understand, so we can connect that to Daniel 9. Okay, so this is from Daniel 9, verse 22 and 23. This is the angel Gabriel speaking to Daniel. Do you guys remember the angel Gabriel from any other places in the Bible?
Yes.
What else did he do? What other times did he show up? He had messages given other times.
What?
Mary.
With Mary.
He told Mary that Jesus would come, right?
How
Yeah.
about with Joseph?
He appeared to Joseph. Didn't he appear to
He appeared with Daniel when he was praying.
Daniel? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then didn't he appear to John the Baptist's father as well?
Yeah.
Yes,
Gabriel as well?
Zechariah, he became mute.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is a very important angel. In fact, when he introduces himself in the Gospels, he says, I am Gabriel who stands in the presence of God. This is a very important
Is
angel.
he the one who replaced Lucifer?
There's speculation that he's on he's definitely one of the angels right next to God, and Lucifer used to be one of the angels right next to God. So you could speculate that maybe he took Lucifer's spot. But it's an interesting thought. Anyway, the important part is that this is a very important angel, right?
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't just send anyone to Daniel, he sends Gabriel. So here's Gabriel speaking. Daniel 9:22 and 23. It says, O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you skill to understand. Now remember, the previous chapter ended with Daniel saying no one understood the vision. And now Gabriel comes the next chapter and says, I'm here to give you understanding. And I have come to tell you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, consider the matter and understand the vision. So Gabriel goes to explain the vision in the previous chapter. And you know what? Probably part of the reason why he had to come back and explain it is if you read Daniel 8, read the whole thing when you get home. Daniel faints and he's sick. He passes out. The vision is so astonishing to him. Probably God had to give him a few days to digest it, and then he'll come back. Daniel couldn't handle it. He's like, he passed out. He couldn't handle it. They had to stand him back up. So Gabriel comes in the next chapter to give him, to help him to understand the vision, the previous chapter. Okay, here's the two parts of Daniel chapter 8. Daniel chapter 8 has two parts. The first part is the beasts, the kingdoms, the two kingdoms, and we're mainly dealing with Medo-Persia and Greece. We've dealt with them before, but it reviews it again. And then the second part is a time prophecy. So there's beasts, that's part of it, and then a time prophecy, that's a separate part. And the time prophecy is the 2300 days. You guys remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that in our evening lessons. It's been a couple weeks, but... Okay, so those are the two parts. So what we are going to do today is we're going to explain the first part, the beasts and the kingdoms. And it's going to be simple. It's going to be a bit of review. It's not that hard. And then we're going to show that it's the 2300 days that Daniel did not understand. And that's the one that's explained and connected to Daniel 9. That's what we're going to do today. And then next week, we'll go into the 2300 days and we'll explain it. Okay? So, that's the two parts. So this part, the beast, this is the one that's understood. It's interpreted. It's explained. It's very simple. This one, Daniel didn't get it. 2300 days. And we'll look at that more next week. Okay. So, the verses on the beast versus the verses on the time prophecy. I just put this in because I like a visual. If you look at your Bible, you look at Daniel chapter 8, when you look at it, the vast majority of that chapter is all about the beasts and the kingdoms. And then only like 4 verses deal with the part that Daniel doesn't understand, the time prophecy, the 2300 days. That's verses 13 and 14, those two verses there. And then at the end, verse 26 and 27. Those are the only parts that deal with the time prophecy that Daniel doesn't understand. Everything else is the beast. And does anyone have chapter headings on their Bibles? You have it?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice that the beginning part, it says maybe the vision of the ram and the goat or something like that.
Yes.
What does it say?
Just that, vision of a ram and a goat.
Yeah, right? And then around what, like verse 18, 19 or so, it says the vision interpreted, something like that? Gabriel interprets the vision. That's it.
Gabriel comforts Daniel.
Comforts Daniel, and then he interprets it. Yeah. So that's the idea. Well, because Daniel passed out. He couldn't handle it, so he's got to get comforted, right? So that's the idea. So it's the vision is basically repeated. It's given, and then it's repeated and interpreted. And at the end of the first part, there's the 2,300 days. Daniel doesn't get it. At the end of the second part, there's the 2,300 days, and it's not really explained, and Daniel doesn't understand it. So that's the two parts. Okay. So a little bit of review. We looked over this the last couple weeks, and in our evening classes as well. 4 empires. You guys familiar with this still? I'm going to keep drilling this into you, because this is the basics of prophecy. If you have these 4 empires understood, then everything else builds from that. So we're laying a firm foundation here. The first one, the head of gold, which lines up with the lion with eagle's wings, Babylon. The second kingdom, the Medo-Persian kingdom, sometimes called just the Persian Empire, was that chest and arms of silver from Daniel 2. And in Daniel chapter 7, it's the bear with 3 ribs raised up on one side. And then the third one, the belly and thighs of bronze, that's Greece. And it was symbolized in Daniel 7 as a leopard with 4 heads and 4 wings. And then the fourth one, Rome, the legs of iron. And it's symbolized in Daniel 7 as the, well, it doesn't compare it to any animal. It just says a terrible beast. And it says it has 10 horns. And then the fourth one is broken up into the feet and toes, which obviously how many toes? 10 toes. And it's the feet of iron and clay. Okay. Which is interesting, just to point this out very briefly. You notice that the fourth empire, so we got Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. The fourth empire, it kind of continues, right? The material continues. We go from legs of iron to feet of iron and clay. But it continues in a different form. You see that? This one, it's a beast. It starts out, and then it has 10 horns. It's broken up into 10 pieces, just as the feet are divided up. Okay? So Rome has 2 phases. It's the Roman Empire phase, and then Rome divided phase. And we looked at what happens with that, and then the little horn shows up, right? And the little horn was who? Do you guys remember?
The papacy.
The papacy. The little horn is the papacy. Yes, we saw that. So after the fall of Rome, around 476 AD, Rome's divided up into pieces, and then the rise of the little horn, the papacy. Okay. That was just quick review. So, Daniel chapter 8 skips Babylon. I'll just tell you guys right from the beginning. It just skips Babylon. The reason why it skips Babylon is very logical. Go to verse 1 of Daniel chapter 8. Somebody read that for us, please.
In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time.
Okay, there's a couple things I want you to notice from that. Number 1 is which king is in power?
Belshazzar.
Belshazzar, not Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the one in Daniel 2, Daniel 1 and 2, all the way through like 5 or 4, right? Yeah. Chapter 5, this is Belshazzar. This is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. And he is the last king of Babylon. In fact, he is killed by the Medo-Persian Empire in chapter 5. Which shows you this is not chronological, because chapter 5 he's killed, chapter 8 he's still here. Right? So this is not necessarily chronological.
Right.
That's not the point. You're supposed to figure that out. Right? So, Belshazzar's the last king of Babylon. Why include a kingdom that's about to go down? It's at the end of the reign of Babylon. Why include them? They're about to be gone. So Daniel chapter 8 doesn't even mention Babylon. It's as if we're done with them. They're about to go down. it just goes into Persia, Greece, and Rome. That's all it does. It just skips that one. The other thing I want you to notice from verse 1, it says that a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. Which one was that?
That was Nebuchadnezzar.
Well, the vision.
Oh, the vision.
Yeah. Which
Oh.
vision appeared to him the first time?
Chapter 7, right?
Chapter 7. That was the only one that Daniel had a vision of.
Yeah.
Chapter 2, well, you could say chapter 2 he got a vision too, but really whose dream was that in chapter 2?
There's Nebuchadnezzar.
That was Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and Daniel explained it.
Mhm.
But chapter 7,
That is his first vision.
that's when Daniel got a vision. Does that make sense?
You're right.
It's his
So
vision.
here in chapter 8, we have a link between chapter 7 and 8. Daniel says this is after the one that I got last chapter, basically. All right? Okay. Moving on. Here's where we explain the dream. This is very simple. Again, the order: Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. We're going to go right into Persia. We're just skipping Babylon. It's just skipped in this chapter. Okay, verse 3 and 4. Daniel chapter 8. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and he talks about he's near the river, was a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. And I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward. Now, we could go in and we can compare this to the bear from the previous chapter, how it's raised up on one side. Here you have 2 horns, one higher than the other, right? And the bear had 3 ribs in its mouth, and this one pushes in 3 directions. It's the same thing. We could go and compare that, but we don't need to. The reason why is because this chapter tells you specifically that's Medo-Persia. You don't even have to guess. Verse 20, Daniel chapter 8, verse 20. The ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. So we don't even have to go through comparing this to the bear in the previous chapter, even though it is. We did that last week. But this is the Medo-Persian Empire. There's no way around it. You guys see that?
Mm.
Okay. Now, so far, did we have a symbol that was interpreted, that was explained?
Yeah.
Would Daniel say, I don't understand about this ram. I don't get it. I mean, he's told flat out, it's Medo-Persia. Yeah, so he understands this part. We understand it. He does. This one's not a problem. This is review. This is the 3rd time he's gone over this kingdom. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So the beasts are understood. It's the 2,300 days that he has problems with.
What I like about verse 20 and 21 of 8 is it's just another confirmation of the interpretation that beasts are a nation.
Absolutely.
And I think people who try to say it's something else this is just so clear. That a beast in
Yep.
Bible prophecy
Is
is
a
a nation. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
nation. It's very clear.
Yeah.
It's very
So we
clear.
just have to figure out what nations they are
Exactly.
by their characteristics.
And the easy thing on this one, it just tells you which nation.
Mm-hmm.
It's Medo-Persia. No way around it. So we have 2 animals here, a ram and a goat. The first animal, this ram with 2 horns, is Medo-Persia.
Medo-Persia.
Who should we expect next?
A degree.
We should expect Greece next. That's following the pattern, right? And that's exactly what we find. Okay, so now we'll go into Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. And there's kind of a bit of a, we could read more of the verses in between, because you had the ram there in verse 3 and 4, and then the goat comes on in verse 5. And this is it. We could read it, it's interesting. Starting in verse 5. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth, which fits geographically. If you look at Persia and Greece on a map, if Greece was to attack Persia, it would come from the west. Yeah, it's to the west of Persia. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. It's over here, the Mediterranean, and Persia's over here on the east, so it would come from the west. So he comes from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. That's interesting. It says he doesn't touch the
It's
ground.
too fast.
He's so fast, almost like he's flying, right? That's speed. That's how you symbolize speed in this agrarian society. Birds are fast. Leopards with 4 wings are fast, right? And that's the previous symbol. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram which had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power, and I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. So now the goat conquers Medo-Persia. Yep. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one who could deliver the ram from his hand. Verse 8. Therefore the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Okay, very detailed prophecy here. See, we have this picture of Greece coming from the west, conquering Medo-Persia, and it starts off with 1 notable horn. And after it conquers, it says it's great. When it's great, that main horn is broken off. And 4 horns come up. Okay? Now the interpretation is given in verse 21 and 22. The male goat is the kingdom of Greece. Again, would this be the part that Daniel doesn't understand? No, it's explained flat out. That's Greece. Very simple. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. Now, who was the first great king of Greece?
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great.
Right.
He conquered the world. He was that first king of the Greek Empire. Yes, that conquered Persia. Absolutely. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of this nation, but not with its power. Not with the same power that Alexander had. So this Greek Empire will be divided up into 4 parts. And we looked at this last week. This is exactly what happened in history. Now notice the review of this. First king, Alexander the Great, broken when he was great. That's very specific. When he was great, he's broken. And then 4 kings come after that. Okay? Now notice this. Alexander the Great conquered the world by about the age 31. There's, people say, 30, 31, around there. He was young, and he conquered it very quickly. It's like this ram that doesn't touch the ground. Conquers the world. He died at age 33 about. And because his son was too young to rule, he didn't have an heir to take over the throne. So quite literally, when the goat became great, when that first horn became great, it was broken. Alexander died at the height of his power, conquered the world, died shortly thereafter. Interesting, right? That's exactly what the prophecy says. Here's a quote from Ancient History Encyclopedia Online Edition. It says here, when he was asked who would succeed him, this is Alexander on his deathbed, Alexander said the strongest, which answer led to his empire being divided between 4 of his generals, Cassander, Ptolemy, Antigonus, and Seleucus, known as the Diadachi? Not sure how that's pronounced. The successors. So there's the history. Alexander was great on his deathbed.
How did he die?
A few days before, he had drank the cup of Hercules, which was this massive cup of wine on a challenge kind of thing. And he got a fever after that, and it's probably complications from that. Yeah.
There are theories about that wasn't instant. The other one was that he was poisoned.
Yeah, there's different theories. We're not sure.
No, we're not sure.
Alcohol poisoning if you drink too
Well,
much.
Yeah, that's a poison.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's very
yeah.
Yeah.
It's poison. It's a poison.
Yeah.
But isn't this amazing how this fits the prophecy?
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel was written way before Alexander was born. And it says that this third empire, Greece, you'd have a notable king at first. Everyone knows who Alexander the Great is. He's notable. Conquers very quickly. At the height of his power, when he was great, he would be broken, divided up into 4. And that's exactly what the history says. It's divided up into his 4 generals. And in chapter 7, it's depicted as a leopard with 4 heads.
Is Antigonus the same as Lysimachus?
I think you're right. There's different names given to the I think one of them.
Yeah, because
yeah.
it's Cassander, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Seleucus.
Yeah, I think Antigonus. You could look that up, but I think it's the same. The idea is it's broken up into 4.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the history. So that's these first four beasts, right? Now, we've looked at Persia, Greece. What should we expect next?
Rome.
No,
That's what we should expect next. We've gone over that's chapter 2, chapter 7. It's the same idea. 4 empires, the fourth one is Rome, and then Rome being divided. Rome continuing, but in a divided, different stage. Now, instead of pagan Rome, then it becomes papal Rome, right? Okay, so that's what we should expect. What kingdom should we expect after Greece? Rome, obviously. Here's the division going on. This is starting in verse 8. Daniel chapter 8, we're in verse 8. Therefore, the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 notable horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Okay,
Where are we?
we're in verse 8.
Verse 8.
Verse 8, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Greece. Greece is broken up into 4 pieces. And out of one of them came a little horn. Does that sound familiar?
yes.
We saw a little horn in the previous chapter, right? And it was a symbol of papal Rome, right? Out of one of them came forth a little horn, which grew exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land, or some translations will say the pleasant land.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what you have. This is Canaan, the Holy Land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the and some of the stars to the ground, and trampled them. And he even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. And notice most translations will capitalize that P in prince of the host, because they know this is talking about Jesus. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. And by him was the daily, now if you have a King James, you have italics for the words that were added. Does anyone have italics there?
The New King has it.
Yeah.
You have it in New King James too? The word sacrifice is added. That's not in the original. It's added. So I put that in quotations there.
It's totally different.
They added it to try and make sense of it, but it's not in the original Hebrew. Hebrew. By him the daily were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily, and he cast the truth to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Okay, now, I'm going to tell you very simply what this little horn symbolizes. The little horn in Daniel 8 is both phases of Rome. The pagan Roman Empire and then papal Rome. And the same symbol is used for both of them. That shouldn't surprise us too much. In Daniel chapter 2, it was legs of iron, and then the iron continues, but it's changed. It's feet of iron and clay. In Daniel 7, it's a beast, and then it has 10 horns, and then there's a little horn out of the same beast. Right? In this chapter, it's just a little horn symbolizing both phases, both the pagan Roman Empire and papal Rome. Why is that? Why doesn't it use another beast? We'll get into that next week. I'll tell you very briefly. The reason why is Daniel wants to focus on having 2 animals here. And there's a reason why he just wants to show 2 instead of going on to a third, and he skips the first one. And it has to do with the 2300 days, but we'll explain that more next week. The point I want you to see now is that this little horn symbolizes both pagan Rome, the Roman Empire, and papal Rome. Now let's look at you'll see the division here. You'll see how it changes. It starts as pagan Rome, and then it continues as papal Rome. So in the beginning here, these first couple of verses, starting in verse 7. And out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great. Now notice the directions it pushes. Toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. Now is that horizontal or vertical? The little horn.
Horizontal.
It's horizontal, right?
Yeah.
It's pushing at these directions, right? This type of pushing in certain directions has described military conquest in previous expedition, right? When we saw the goat or the ram, it pushed toward 3 directions.
Hmm.
These were military conquests, right? This part here, it's pushing toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. This is Rome conquering, and it's conquering from the west, in Rome, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land, which is Canaan. And it did conquer in that way. It conquered the glorious land. It occupied Israel.
That's
Israel.
why during the time of Jesus Christ, it was Rome time.
It was Roman times, conquering Israel. Whereas during the previous empire, in Medo-Persia, there was freedom given to the Jews. They were set free under the Medo-Persian Empire. And during Greece, Alexander came to there, and Josephus tells us that he came and the high priest came out to him and showed him his place in prophecy. Do you know that? Josephus tells us that. He shows him Daniel 8, says, "You're the great horn." and Alexander was so impressed by that, he left them alone. He didn't really conquer the Jews. They were, to a large degree, they were given autonomy. But Rome doesn't do that. Rome conquers the glorious land.
And that was right around Rome's highlight, was that time period. That was their heyday.
In fact, that
They
was
were
the
in
jewel
their
to
heyday.
capture Israel. That was kind of the,
Yeah, that was in their
absolutely.
height.
In fact, Rome started small.
It started small, yeah.
They're not notable before, but they were creeping under the...
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the Greeks were very impressed with the Jewish nation to the point that they even provided interpreters to interpret the Bible into Greek. That's the Septuagint. So the whole
That's how
world
we have the
would read
Greek. Yeah, that's how we have the Greek Old Testament.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So this first part here, this is pagan Rome, making military conquest, pushing horizontal, right? Then notice the switch here. The next verse, we're in verse 10. Yeah, verse 10. And it grew up to the host of heaven. That's the stars. Now which direction is it pushing?
Vertical.
Vertical. Now it's going up. So it conquers on the world, and now it has
Heaven.
divine ambitions and starts attacking heaven. It grew up to the host of heaven, did cast some of the hosts of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host.
Yes.
Now we're talking papal Rome. Do you guys see this?
That's right.
Yes.
Amen.
Who was the guy who said that he takes the place of the second person of the
The
God
Pope.
Trinity? That's the Pope. That's from his own book. He says he takes the place of Jesus. So this exactly fits the prophecy.
He said it's the vicegerent.
The
Vicar.
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 The vicar. Yeah, vice regent is like another word that's similar, but yeah, vicar.
Vicar.
The vicar of the Son of God. So he exalts himself
Talk about blasphemy.
to the Prince of the
Yeah.
host.
There's
Absolutely.
blasphemy.
Absolutely, right?
Big.
Big
You
time
wouldn't have said that to them at that time either.
Yeah, oh yeah, you dare not say that's blasphemy to their face back then.
Part of the reason why this is written in symbols, that's part
Oh,
of the reason
yeah.
why this is written,
'Cause
because
you get in
God
trouble.
knew that it needed to be people who really studied His Word in order to understand who it was.
Because if it just
Was
Can't-
outright,
right,
this would be even
yeah.
more
yeah,
destroyed.
Absolutely.
that's a good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going. He exalted himself as high as the Prince of the hosts. Hi, please join us. I think there's a couple seats.
Hi, honey.
How
are you?
I like your kitty ears.
We have a kitten in there.
Yep.
We're kind of at the end of our prophecy study, but hopefully you get a little bit here. Okay. And by him let's see here, he exalted himself as high as the Prince of the hosts, and by him the daily were taken away, and in the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given him over to the horn. An army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily. Now notice this, an army is given him. You don't normally say that about a king. A king has its own army. But
Yes.
here you have this power, it's given an army. That fits the papacy. Because the papacy it's a religious power, and so troops are given to it to enforce its will. And he cast the truth to the ground, and he did all this and prospered. This is a religious attack now. So he's going against Jesus, he's going against the stars, which we've seen in Revelation as a symbol of the angels. He's casting the sanctuary to the ground, casting the truth to the ground. This is a religious attack. So here we see pagan Rome, and then papal Rome.
Yeah.
Okay, And then the interpretation is given in verse 23 and 25. You guys all following this so far?
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is all talking about papal Rome here. In the latter time of their kingdom, so at the end, Greece is done. The transgressors have reached their fullness. A king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes.
Mhm.
So now we're talking about trickery, right?
Mhm.
This isn't just power, this is
Deception.
trickery, deception. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. Again, this is the papacy who is given an army. It's not by his own power, he's given an army to enforce his teachings. That perfectly fits papal Rome, where other kingdoms would say, whatever you declare, we'll go and fight for you. That perfectly fits. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. Now, the word here for destroy, this is very interesting. The word here for destroy, in Hebrew, it could mean two different things. I looked this up because I thought this was interesting the other day. I looked up the Hebrew word. It means to corrupt. It means to corrupt. So depending on the context, right? So in the Old Testament, you look this word up and it says, you guys have corrupted yourself with other
For
gods.
you to define.
Defiled, that idea, right?
Yeah.
And so when it says that he shall destroy, think he shall corrupt the mighty and the holy people. So he corrupts God's people. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
This is the
That
papacy.
makes
Oh,
sense.
Notice this
So it's
again.
not physical.
Not necessarily.
physically
The Hebrew
destroyed,
means
but
both.
by
The Hebrew means both.
deception.
Yeah,
But both.
And in Hebrew, once you've corrupted, that means you destroy, because then punishments come, right? So both happen. It's the idea of both. Through his cunning, again, this is deception. Through his cunning, he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall again destroy, that's corrupt. He shall corrupt many in their prosperity.
Mhm.
Isn't that interesting? So in prosperity, they're corrupted. That is the church during the papal ages. Powerful, prosperous, but corrupt. Gold and ruling over the world, but corrupt. He shall even rise against the Prince of Princes, that's Jesus. But he shall be broken, notice this, without human means. Or some say without human hands, depending on which version you're in. That means the papacy is not destroyed by another empire. It lasts until the end of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's destroyed at the second coming.
It says no human means.
No human means. These are the same words, the
They
same
haven't
phrase
done
that's
it.
used in Daniel 2, where it says a rock was cut out without human hands
No
and
hands.
smote the image on the feet and destroyed the statue, right? That's the second coming. So what we see here is this little horn lasts until the end of time.
Yeah, it's still here now.
It has to be
Yep.
around till the end because it's
In a
destroyed
mighty way.
without
Even more
human
corrupt
hands.
than ever.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Notice the similarity between the little horn and Daniel 7. I beheld the same horn made war with the saints. Similar, right? He corrupts and destroys the holy people and prevailed against them. He shall speak great words against the Most High.
Mhm.
The little horn in Daniel 8, he magnifies himself to the Prince of Princes. This is the same power. Okay, now, very briefly, because we're out of time here, let's go into the part that Daniel doesn't understand, and we're going to look at this more next week. Notice the switch between what Daniel sees and what he hears. In verse, let's see here, verse 1 and 2, you'll see it talks about Daniel having a vision. Let's see here.
What chapter is this? 8?
Daniel chapter 8.
Mhm.
A vision appeared to me,
Mhm.
verse 1. Verse 2, I saw in the vision. So this is what he sees, right? Now, notice this in verse 13. Now it says, then I heard. So there's a distinction. The first part, the beast part, is what he sees. The vision of the time prophecy, he says he hears it. That's another distinction here.
Mhm.
And there's a distinction between what he sees and what he hears. It's two different parts of this prophecy. Then I heard a holy one speaking. This is verse 13 of Daniel 8. And another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation? the giving of both the sanctuary and the hosts to be trampled underfoot. And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. This is this separate part that Daniel doesn't understand. Now I want to note, I highlighted the word days here for a reason. If you look in your Strong's Concordance, and you look at what that word days is, it's actually in Hebrew, it's evenings and mornings.
That's what?
Evenings and mornings.
Evenings and mornings.
Because in Hebrew, they didn't start it, in those days, they didn't start the day at midnight, like we do, right? They started the day at
On the
sunset.
sunset.
So the first part of the day was nighttime, they call it evening. And the next part of the day was the daytime part, the morning, right? Evenings and mornings. You remember Genesis 1? The evening and the morning were the first day?
Yes.
The evening and the morning were the second day, right? So it literally, this word, it says for 2,300 evenings and mornings. But it's just translated as days. Same idea. Now, I'm pointing that out for a reason because it'll make sense as we go along. Notice that the vision of the beasts is explained in Daniel 19 through 25. Did we understand the vision of the beasts? Does that make sense to you guys?
Mhm.
It was
Oh,
fully
yeah.
explained, right? So that's not the part that Daniel doesn't understand. The 2,300 days is not explained yet in this chapter. In fact, it says it is sealed until the end of time. This is fascinating. Part of this prophecy is sealed until the end of time. Notice this. This is Daniel chapter 8, the last two verses of the chapter, verse 26 and 27. The vision of the evenings and mornings which was told is true. Which vision was that? Which was the evenings and morning one? That was the 2,300 days, right? That's why I wanted to point out when it says days, that's evenings and mornings. Because that's what it's talking about here. So he says, the vision of the evenings and mornings, the 2,300 days, which was told is true, therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. So this part of the prophecy is sealed until the future. And you look around verse 19 or so, it says that this is about the end of time. Let's see, verse 19. I will make you, I'm making you know what shall happen in the latter time, for at the appointed time the end shall be. It's talking about the end of time.
19.
In verse 19, yeah. So this vision of the 2,300 days is sealed because it refers to many days in the future. So it's not understood by Daniel and it's sealed. It's very important. We're going to build on that next week. Verse 27. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick many days. Afterwards I rose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but none understood it. This is the 2,300 days that he does not understand. It's sealed. Which part is sealed? Now, notice this. There's two Hebrew words for vision used here. I told you this chapter has two parts. And there's two different Hebrew words for vision used. Now, I'm probably going to slaughter these, pronouncing them, but the two Hebrew words for vision used in this chapter are chazon, something like that. I'm not pronouncing it right. Chazon and mareh. Mareh, right? Something like that. Those are the two words that are used. Notice which different words are used, right? At the beginning it says, in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision, that's chazon, a vision, appeared to me. Verse 2, I saw in the vision, chazon. This is the beast. This is the chazon part, right? In verse 26 it says, the vision of the evenings and mornings, that's the 2,300 days, different word, mareh. Mareh. It's a different, there's two parts to this. Does that make sense? There's two different words used. The beast part is referred to as chazon, and that's explained. The 2,300 days is mareh, and that's sealed and not understood. Does that make sense? Two different Hebrew words. Notice this in Daniel chapter 9 when Gabriel comes. He says, I've come to give you skill and understanding. Consider the matter. Understand the vision. Guess which Hebrew word that is? Mareh. It's talking about the 2,300 days. Isn't that interesting? That's the part that Daniel didn't understand, and so he comes back to explain it. Isn't that interesting? very interesting stuff here. And so that 2,300 days is sealed until next week. No, it's sealed until the end of time, and we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it more next week. Does this all make sense?
Yes.
All right. Leave you guys with that cliffhanger. Tonight, again, we're going to look at we're going to repeat our prophecy seminar we did. We skipped last week. Some people couldn't make it, so I decided to postpone it. So you didn't miss
Oh,
anything.
okay, good.
Bless you.
So we're going to look at the USA and Bible prophecy. We were supposed to do that last week. We'll look at that tonight at 7.
Okay.
Let's close with
Yoo-hoo.
prayer.
Wow. That was
Somebody want
nice.
to say a prayer for us?
Yes, that was wonderful. I will.
Please, please.